Hello everyone, my name is Alan Kutsia and I'm a New Zealand licensed immigration advisor for Choose New Zealand. We're an education migration consultancy based in Auckland, and today I'm actually filming this from my home. We're still under level 3 COVID-19 lockdown as we speak, but I thought I'd use this opportunity to talk about essential skills work visas and specifically why ANZSCO continues to be very important. Now, many people have heard that there's been a big change in the essential skills work category. Basically, it's no longer used to assess the length or conditions of the visa. Anyone making at or above the median wage will get a 3-year visa. Anyone making below the median wage will get a much shorter visa. Um, Now, this has led some people to come to the conclusion that ANZSCO no longer matters for work visas. We're throwing away ANZSCO, and this is completely incorrect. ANZSCO continues to be very important, and you should definitely be familiar with it before you apply for a work visa. So, three things I'm going to talk about. First, what is ANZSCO? Second, choosing the right job title, ANZSCO occupation for you. And finally, ANZSCO and the job advertisement. So first, what is ANZSCO? It's the Australia and New Zealand Standard Classification of Occupations. It is a database of jobs that is used by Immigration New Zealand to tell apart who are the receptionists, who are the PAs, who are the managers, who are the supervisors, etc. Very important site. You can find it just on Google, ANZSCO. You will get a link to a website that looks like this. And the next step now is to find an occupation in the ANZSCO that matches what you actually do in your job. So two ways you can do that: use the search bar or use the contents. Most people don't know that it's actually, in my opinion, easier to browse the ANZSCO than to search it. But that's just how I feel about it. So when you've found an occupation that matches your job, three important things to look at are the job title, the skill level of the job, the requirements for the job, and the job description, and the tasks. So let's take a very quick look at an actual ANZSCO page. You might not be able to read this, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to quickly go through how it's structured. So we have here something about unit group for restaurant managers. So here we have the job description. And if we go below this, we see it's skill level 2. Okay, it requires a diploma and at least 3 years relevant work experience. Okay, right under that, we have a list of tasks. These are duties that a restaurant manager is expected to do as part of their day-to-day work. You don't have to do all of the tasks, but you should be doing most of them. Below that, we finally have the job title at the bottom of the page, and there are a few extra notes as well. It's worth reading it. You might find something particular to your position, so read the whole thing. But these are the main things you need to pay attention to: is the job title, the skill level and requirements, the job description, and the tasks. So what are the skill levels? There are 5 skill levels in ANZSCO, ranging from 1 to 5. So 1 are the highest skill levels. You require a bachelor's degree. Some, but not all, will allow you to substitute the bachelor's with 5 years relevant work experience. But definitely don't just use this table. Check out the ANZSCO requirements specific to your occupation. So skill level 1 is the highest. Under this, we have skill level 2. This requires a diploma level certificate as assessed by the New Zealand Qualifications Authority, or 3 years work experience, relevant work experience. Below that, we have skill level 3. You require a low level certificate or 3 years work experience. Skill level 4, 1 year's work experience will qualify you for this position. And then there's skill level 5. These are positions that the ANZSCO considers available to anyone. So anyone can do it regardless of your education or work experience. Now, let's take an example of a restaurant. Okay, so the restaurant has different positions. We have the kitchen hand, who prepares the ingredients, peels the carrots, etc. We have the cook. Cooks are skill level 3 right now, but they will soon be downgraded to skill level 4. So maybe by the time you watch this video, it'll have happened. Anyway, chefs are similar to cooks, but they have a higher position. They design the menu. They kind of manage the kitchen much more. And then we have the restaurant manager, who manages the whole operation, basically. Now, this looks very neat and tidy. In reality, it's actually not that simple. there's always going to be a lot of overlap whenever people are working together. So the kitchen hand and cook might both be preparing ingredients together. The cook and the chef will obviously be cooking food together, and the chef and the restaurant manager will be designing the menu, pricing items together as well. So there is always a lot of overlap between certain occupations, and you can use this to your advantage to choose a job, an occupation in the ANZSCO that advantages your immigration status. So let's take an example of just a two-person business. We have the owner, and he has a migrant employee. Now, the owner is kind of hands-off in the business. They delegate most of their duties to the migrant employee. So the employee is doing some low-level things, but they're also doing a lot of high-level things. Now, what ANZSCO job occupation would they choose? So two options might be a retail supervisor. Now, this is skill level 4 as unskilled. If you went down that route, you would be emphasizing the low skill things that they do. So stacking shelves, basic customer service, things like that. On the other hand, if they wanted to emphasize the skilled things that they do, they could go for a retail manager. That's skill level 2. So, focusing on the, marketing policy, stock inventory, a lot of the management things that the manager would do. So two options. We can go for a low skill or a skilled position. Now, what's the difference? As we said earlier, both the low skilled and the skilled position will result in the same visa length and conditions. If you're paid at or above the median wage, you will get a 3-year visa, no matter what the ANZSCO occupation is. So again, what is the difference? Well, they are quite subtle, but they are still important. So first, depending on your level of education or experience, you may or may not be eligible to apply under a skilled position. So if we look back at retail manager, it requires a diploma or 3 years relevant work experience. However, a retail supervisor, which is basically a shop assistant, requires a certificate or 1 year's work experience. Now, let's say this employee has 2 years work experience and no relevant qualifications. Can they apply as a retail supervisor? Yes, they have more than enough experience. Can they apply as a retail manager? No. A retail manager requires 3 years work experience. So they need to apply under the category that they are when they meet the requirements. A second important thing is related to the advertisements. So lower skilled jobs have lower entry requirements, and these entry requirements should be stated in the ad. Now, look at this ad here. Tell me, what do you think? So retail supervisor, skill level 4. Candidates must have 3 years work experience. Now, this is not going to be an acceptable ad for Immigration New Zealand. They say skill level 4 only requires 1 year. Why are you asking for 3 years work experience? We believe that you are deliberately discouraging New Zealanders from applying because you just want to give the job to a migrant. And that is contrary to the objectives of the essential skills work visa instructions, and your visa may be declined, probably would be declined. So how could you correct this ad? Well, simply change 3 years down to 1 year. So candidates must have 1 year's work experience. In that case, the ad would be acceptable to Immigration New Zealand. On the other hand, however, any New Zealander who applies and has 1 year or more of relevant work experience must be considered for the position. If they reject them, even though they meet the requirements of the ad, well, then that puts your visa in jeopardy. On the other hand, however, if we have an ad for a retail manager position, now we've gone up to skill level 2, we may keep this 3 years work experience as a requirement, because skill level 2 positions, according to ANZSCO, require 3 years relevant work experience in order to meet the requirements. So if a New Zealander applied and they had 1 year work experience or 2 years work experience, your employer could quite reasonably reject them for the position and offer the role to you, as long as you have the 3 years work experience, of course. So this is why the skilled level of the position makes it easier or harder to pass the labor market test. The higher the skill level, the more freedom your employer has to reject New Zealand candidates, and the higher your chances are of getting the visa. But I do need to caution you at this point, some people get really creative with this. You'll start to get receptionists calling themselves managers and things like this. You can't do that, all right? It has to be genuinely applicable to your position. So if we go back to our example, we had this employee. He does some of the tasks of a retail supervisor, some of the tasks of a retail manager. They may have a chance of convincing Immigration New Zealand that they are doing the job of a retail manager. On the other hand, if we take another employee in another company, this guy's doing almost all of their work at a low level, and occasionally they do a little bit of management, maybe when the manager goes on leave. Now, this person cannot reasonably say, I am a manager, because they're spending 1 hour a day or 1 day a month managing the business. This is not going to work. This person must apply as a retail supervisor. So do take advantage of the overlaps in your actual job position, but don't start getting so creative that it has no correspondence to reality. Okay, one last thing I'd like to mention is that lower skilled jobs are usually ineligible for skilled migrant category residents. So you might get your 3-year visa under a skill level 4 or 5 job and be very happy for 3 years, but then it comes time to apply for SMC residence. ANZ will say, well, your job is not skilled. SMC requires a ANZSCO skill level 1, 2, or 3 job in order to qualify, unless the pay is extremely high. So you would have to convince Immigration New Zealand that you've actually got a promotion to a higher position. Obviously, this has to be true. But even if it is true, ANZ may have trouble believing it. So applying under a lower skill level could make a future residence application harder for you. So here are a few things to keep in mind. You can see ANZSCO continues to be very important. But I'd like to go back to advertisements, because advertisements are very important too. They can make or break an application. So let's take a look at a couple examples, just two. We have here a chef needed to work at XYZ Restaurant in Parnell. You will need to keep the kitchen clean and tidy, cut vegetables and measure ingredients, help the owner to assemble meals for service, plate dishes for service by the waitress. You must have at least 3 years experience to apply. Now, what do you think about this ad? So you have chef. If you recall, chef is a skill level 2 position. The requirement says 3 years work experience. Yeah, that's fine, right? Skill level 2 can require 3 years work experience. But there's something else much more fundamentally wrong with the ad, and that's the job description. This doesn't look like a chef position at all. It looks more like a kitchen hand. So ANZ will say, well, this is a kitchen hand position. It's not a chef position. And you might say, oh, okay, fine. It's a kitchen hand position. Just give me the visa. But then they point down there and say, well, you asked for 3 years experience for an ANZSCO skill level 5 position. You are trying to discourage New Zealanders. So again, make sure that the job description matches the ANZSCO. So here we have another example. Restaurant manager, you will need to plan the menu along with the chef, organize special functions and events, maintain budgets, pricing, and other financial matters, hire trained staff as needed. Now, we have restaurant manager. Okay. What about the job description? Well, let's take a look back at the ANZSCO, and we can match these tasks to the description in the ad. You might not be able to read this, but I can tell you that they are quite similar. Okay, the job description in the ANZSCO matches quite closely with the ad. So this is a fine job description for Immigration New Zealand. But there's a problem. They have not required any experience or qualifications. So according to this ad, any New Zealander who applies, regardless of their level of experience, is qualified for the role. Now, employers made a big mistake. They no longer have any freedom to reject people, and the visa could get in trouble just if there's even one New Zealander who's rejected. So do keep in mind, remember to list the requirements for experience or qualification. It will make it easier to reject New Zealanders who the employer doesn't want, and you are more likely to get your visa. Okay, so that's all. It's been a long video. I hope you're still watching us. So just to summarize, ANZSCO does not affect the length of the visa or its conditions. but it's still generally better to apply for a skilled position if you meet the ANZSCO requirements and if your work is genuinely skilled. This is especially because it will qualify you for residence and it makes it easier to pass the labor market test and have higher requirements in the ad. Make sure that the job description in the ad is similar to the ANZSCO title you apply under. Okay, job descriptions always, ads must always list the job descriptions. Make it similar to ANZSCO. Don't copy and paste, but make it quite close. And finally, make sure the requirements in the ad are not too high, or INZ will accuse you of discouraging New Zealanders from applying, but also not too low, because if they're too low, you'll be flooded with suitable New Zealand applicants and it could jeopardize the visa application. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching. Here are our contact details. I hope this has been useful to you. You can follow us on Facebook. Send us a message anytime on Facebook. The Facebook page is monitored by me and the licensed immigration advisors from Choose New Zealand. You can also send us an email, give us a phone call, or once the lockdown level 3 is lifted, visit our office at level 3, 142 Broadway, and Newmarket, Auckland. Thanks very much. Again, my name is Alan Kutsia. It's been great talking to you, and I hope to see you in the next video.